Good morning, Sedona. It is Saturday, May 18th, 2024, and this is Sedona Life with Stephen Hanks, Red Rock Country's radio magazine, heard every Saturday at this time on KAZM 106.5 FM and 780 AM Mellow Mountain Radio, and it's also live streamed at mellowmountainradio.com. But of course, if you're hearing this right now, you're either in your car or you have a radio where you're hearing it, so maybe you're not live streaming it, but for future shows, you can live stream it on your computer, if any of that makes sense. I'm in a little wacky mood this morning, everybody, so just bear with me. I'm your host, Stephen Hanks, and I welcome you to a radio show that each week explores all the fascinating aspects of life in Sedona and the Verde Valley and engages with intriguing personalities like the two people in my studio right now, from all walks of life in our area. Today's show and all of my shows until the end of May, which is coming up, are being sponsored by an outstanding local real estate company. Damien and Danielle's Sedona Village Real Estate Group with Coldwell Banker Realty should be your go-to real estate agents in the Sedona area. Why, you may ask? Because their experience in Sedona and the Verde Valley and their dedication to this community matter. My producer behind the glass is the always reliable Ryan Thompson. How you doing, Ryan?
Good. Yourself?
I'm okay. A little punchy, as you can already hear. For what reason, I don't know. I think it's because my Knicks lost last night.
Yeah, they're going to go to 8-7.
Yeah, I know. I hope people in Sedona are not offended that I still root for my old New York teams.
Hey, if the Suns are out, you can vote for anybody.
There you go. All right. So Ryan, our listeners heard last Saturday morning when my special guests were Damien Bruno and Danielle Gian of Sedona Village Real Estate Group, that KAZM Mellow Mountain Radio was going to be well represented at the 10th annual Village of Oak Creek Community Barbecue that they organize. And I had the honor of being MC for the event, and the honchos of this radio station, Chuck Helstein and yourself,
yes,
were on hand pumping out the music as DJs for 3 hours, and you did a great job. So how did you feel about being at the event?
Oh, it was great. It was nice being out there and meeting everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I think they had about 400 people.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I think everybody had a good time, too.
Yeah.
Kids were loving it with all the bouncy houses and stuff.
That's right. And the vibe. Did you like the Red Rock ice cream?
I did.
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
that was pretty good stuff, right?
Look at my belly, of course. I did.
Well, you were working hard, so you could work it off.
Yeah.
The calories went fast. So I got to tell you, Ryan, I'm really looking forward to this show, as is my hiking-obsessed wife, B, who, as we all know, is called
The Woman Warrior.
There you go. Because my special in-studio guests are board members of the Sedona Westerners Hiking Club. But before I introduce them and we go on a Sedona Trek conversation, it's time for a weekly top of the show segment, Stephen's Sedona Scene, as Ryan plays this Stephen Sedona Scene music. This is when I recommend a few fascinating events happening from today into next week and in Sedona and the Verde Valley, and also one special event happening in New York City next Friday night. So how's that for a tease? So to start, I got to tell you about this one. There is a very cool concert being staged tonight from 7 to 10 p.m. at the Old Town Center for the Arts in Cottonwood. And you know it's a big deal when anything in this area is running until 10 o'clock at night, right? So my guests are chuckling because they know what I'm talking about. So since 2006, Old Town Center for the Arts has presented an annual birthday celebration of the music of Bob Dylan, who on May 24th is going to be 83 years old. Talk about times they are changing. The concert will feature some of the best musicians in Sedona and the Verde Valley. The first half of the concert will be all acoustic guitar driven, while the second half will be all electric guitar, kind of signifying the transition that Dylan made from acoustic to electric in the early part of his career. Since the show is tonight, I'm suggesting you get your tickets as soon as possible by going to showtix4u.com, and the 4 is the number, showtix4u.com. And you can also get information at oldtowncenter.org or calling, and nobody is going to be able to write this down in time, but I have to do it anyway, calling 928-634-0940. So in late February at the 2024 Sedona International Film Festival, the top award-winning film turned out to be the premiere of the documentary Robert Shields' My Life as a Robot. Robert Shields has lived in the Verde Valley for many years and was part of the world-famous dance and mime duo Shields and Yornell, who became American TV stars in the 1970s. In fact, the legendary French mime Marcel Marceau once called Robert Shields the greatest mime in America. And folks, I actually saw this film at the festival, and it was totally fascinating. So I highly recommend that you see it. The showings at the film festival opened yesterday and are continuing until Thursday, May 23rd at both the Mary D. Fisher and Alice Gill Sheldon theaters. For a complete schedule and ticket information, go to SedonaFilmFestival.com. And Ryan, you know, Robert Shields is also a terrific artist. I think I need to get this guy on Sedona Life with Stephen Hanks.
Let's do it.
He would be great. Although he's a mime, I don't know. If, I might be
live stream.
I might be doing all the talking. Yeah. I can interpret his mannerisms. Yeah. I have to mention, I don't usually mention movies that the film festival is doing unless they're really special. And this is one of those cases. I had to mention it because they are showing a classic that is one of my favorites. Tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. and Wednesday, May 22nd at 6:30 p.m. at the Alice Gill Sheldon Theater, you can view one of Alfred Hitchcock's greatest theater thrillers, North by Northwest, which is celebrating its 65th anniversary this year. Cary Grant, Eva Marie Saint, James Mason, a very young Martin Landau before his Mission Impossible days, and Mount Rushmore as one of the locations. Need I say more? And by the way, it also has one of the greatest film scores written by Bernard Herrmann, who was probably one of the 3 or 4 greatest film composers in the history of this country. I absolutely love this film, so if by chance you have never seen it, which frankly is hard to believe, please go to SedonaFilmFestival.com and order your tickets. This next item on Steven's Sedona Scene isn't an event coming up in the next week, but I'm mentioning it because it involves a terrific program headed by 2 close friends I've made since moving to Sedona almost 3 years ago, both of whom have been on previous episodes of this show. Songwriter-performer Chandra Jefferson and screenwriter-performer Dev Ross, both award-winning talents, are now accepting registrations for the upcoming 17th year of the Sedona Youth Theater for theatrical and musically talented kids from ages 11 through 18, which, with the support of my friend Patrick Swice and the Sedona International Film Festival, has been expanded to a 15 days over 3-week program starting on July 8th. During these Monday through Friday sessions from noon to 1:30 p.m., kids will explore and expand their talents through theater games, improvisation, vocal and acting exercises, and story development, all taught by 2 extremely talented and experienced professionals, which Chandra and Dev truly are. And seriously, I wish I could be a teenager again just so I could do this program. Tuition for the 15-day workshop is $180, such a deal. For more information on registering your child for the Sedona Youth Theater, visit the website the2lucies.com. I guess that's Chandra and Dev. I don't know if it's Lucy and Ethel, but it's the2lucies.com. Or call 928-301-8288. Did I just age myself with that Lucille Ball reference? Maybe not in Sedona. I didn't. So Ryan, as you know, because you were here, I was in the studio yesterday taping our show with the Sedona City Council members that will air on KAZM Mountain Radio next Saturday morning, May 25th at 9 a.m. Why, you may ask, that I need to pre-record my show? It's because this Tuesday I'm taking off for New York City for a week, not just to attend a nephew's wedding on Memorial Day weekend, but on next Friday night, I'm serving as the producer and host of a variety cabaret concert that will be a fundraiser for Democratic New York congressional candidates who have a great chance to flip districts from Republican to Democratic in districts that Joe Biden won in the 2020 presidential election. The show will feature 16 incredibly talented women performers who will be singing in support of abortion rights, gun safety laws, free and fair election, LGBTQ plus rights, humane immigration policies, fighting right-wing extremism, and freedom from tyranny. Now, I mentioned this on a radio show in Sedona because I know many of my listeners have relatives and friends in the New York City area, and I hope that you'll let them know about this event that will take place at 7 p.m. at the famous cabaret club Don't Tell Mama on 46th Street, Restaurant Row in Manhattan. For more information and reservations, go to don'ttellmamanyc.com/shows, and you can just make your reservation there. And if you go to the show, they just take cash out of your pocket when you walk in. So you can't do it online. You can't. So now my guests have patiently been waiting for me to get through all of my announcements here. For our listeners who don't know much about the Sedona Westerners Hiking Club, which again would be a surprise, here's some info I'm sure my guests will expand upon during our conversation. So the Sedona Westerners is one of the oldest continuously active clubs in Sedona, dating back to 1961, when it was a social club providing entertainment for visitors and members. In fact, and I found this interesting when I saw this, the Verde Valley Archaeological Society actually was a spin-off group from the Westerners, which got its name because some early members were enamored with Western dress and Western lore. In 1965, hiking was added as just another social event on the calendar, and apparently that changed everything. Early Westerners members, in conjunction with the U.S. Forest Service, established many of the Sedona and Verde Valley hiking trails that are still in use today. The Sedona Westerners is a nonprofit and completely voluntary organization with no paid officers. And one of those officers is their new incoming president, Terry Petrescu. Is that the way I pronounce it? Terry has been a member of the Westerners since arriving in Sedona in 2012 and has served as a hike leader on many of the hikes, has led 2 of the hiking groups, and served as trail boss. And they'll explain what that is when we talk. In the fall, she will serve a second year as president. The first year served was 2020 during COVID, when group activities were disruptive. And Terry is also active in Friends of the Forest, as is the Woman Warrior. Sarah Stifler is the public relations officer and also the roundup boss for the Sedona Westerners. She writes and edits articles on the Westerners hikes each week for publication in the Sedona Red Rock News. Sarah began hiking on a weekly basis about 10 years ago while living in Southern California, and she says hiking is what brought her to Sedona. Ladies, I welcome you to Sedona Life with Stephen Hanks. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
Usually I would start with the president, but I want Sarah, I want you to tell, because you were telling me before the show, which I didn't know because my wife doesn't talk to me. No, I'm only kidding. That my wife B had something to do with you joining before your meteoric rise in the club that we see now. So tell me how that happened.
She did. I got here about 2 years ago, and I was looking for this other hiking group that I'd found online, and they had a hike planned at Courthouse Butte, and I was like, I'll go find them. I couldn't find them. So I drove around a little bit, and I was sitting in my car in one of the parking lots, and this woman walks up to my car and taps on the window, and I rolled it down, and she said, "Are you here for the Sedona Westerners?" I'm like, no, but I'd like to be.
You know,
And that was your wife, B.
wow. Yeah, and what's funny about that is we had just moved here. So it was very bold of her to act like she was like a honcho
Yes,
that early
indeed,
on.
indeed. Yeah. So I ended up hiking with them that day, and it was I think it was a 5-mile hike. And they asked me afterwards, they were like, how was that for you? And I'm like, this is what I came for. This is great.
That's great. That's a great story. So Terry, as long as we're on that path, how about telling us how you got involved at the beginning when you got here?
So when we got here, first we joined the Friends of the Forest.
Okay.
And I did a lot of trail maintenance with them. So I was out, sledging rocks and picking up rocks that a horse could walk on.
Good for you. That's great.
Doing stuff like that. And then my husband says, I don't want to just do trail maintenance. So I said, okay, well, let's do some more hiking. And we found about the Westerners and we joined. And
so you were a pretty frequent hiker before you joined?
when we lived in San Diego, we didn't hike as much. We did a lot of bike riding. Uh-huh. There's not a whole lot of good trails in downtown San Diego area.
Right.
Although there are a few canyons. So we did some hiking, but
Right.
nothing like here.
Right.
And when we joined the Westerners, we looked at their list of all the different hikes and said, we don't know where we fit in this group. So we started with the easiest group and worked our way up until we found the groups that were our hiking abilities.
Well, that actually provides a great segue to one of the things I wanted to talk about, which is that I kind of found fascinating when B got involved, is these different categories within the club based on experience and, how you can handle difficult trails. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the breakdown of the categories and what they all mean?
Yeah, so the Westerners basically tries to give a whole different range of hiking for anybody from a casual hiker to the experienced, I want to go out on all-day hikes. So we've got our Amblers group right now is the easiest group, and they do generally 3 to 5 mile, pretty easy trails. And then the most difficult is the Rough Riders, and they'll do 12, 15 miles some days and come back with their tongues hanging out.
Wow. And
the Ambler stops and takes pictures. The Rough Riders are go, go, go.
Now, so I have to ask this because we're in Sedona. And because we know what the demographic is, one of the fascinating things to me is like a lot of these people in whatever group it is, from easy to harder, if those are the right words, they're pretty up there in years, right? What kind of age groups do you have involved in this?
So when I got here, I retired early, so I was 50, and I was like the youngster in the group. And
I bet.
now I'm in my 60s, and I'm kind of still the youngster.
Right.
There are people hiking that are in their 80s.
I heard that, yeah. And some of them on the difficult trails?
Some of them are still on the more difficult trails.
Wow. That's great.
Yep.
The older people that are hikers, do they do other activities, or is this their main source of exercise?
It's all over the board.
Yeah.
It's all over the board. Some
Yeah.
of the people hike almost every day. Other people play pickleball or go swim or do yoga, all sorts of things.
Yeah. So Sarah, one of your main jobs right now is like I said, editing and writing for the Red Rock News, although I know you have a number of different members that do that.
Right.
So what's involved with that, and what kind of feedback do you get from the stories? Does it help improve, increase membership? Tell me about.
Well, that's kind of part of the focus, is to let people know that we exist and this is what we're doing, and try to entice them with the stories that we're telling in the paper every week. The other side is some of our members have aged out, and so this is a way for them to still experience the Sedona Westerners without actually getting out on the trails. So I think we did about 40 articles this year. Since late August we started, and so each week.
Oh, so this is a new thing in the last year?
No, I mean since I started.
Since you started, right?
I meant to say since I started. So we do it from late August to the end of May, basically.
Oh, because it's seasonal, right?
Yeah, because the hiking season is over. Because it's just it's.
But still,
hot.
I'm doing a show every week, and I'm already getting to the point where I'm like, okay, who are my guests going to be in August? I've got, in September. I've got to come up with content. So even if you're only doing 40 a year, you have enough material to do a column every week?
We do. We have I think there's 6 active groups that we hike every week. And so, I basically told each group, if you write 6 articles each,
right,
we'll get there, and then I'll do a couple of supplementary articles as well, just kind of introducing the club. And then I've got, in 2 weeks, we'll have the roundup, which will give all the information about what the season was like.
Right.
But hikers will submit an article after they've done their hike, and I'll look at it and see if it fits the standard of what we're trying to do, and most of them really do. And then I just kind of clean it up and then ship it over to the newspaper.
So are people assigned in advance, or they volunteer in advance to write?
No, not in advance. it's
so they do the hike and then they say, "Hey, I want to write about what I just did."
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's that made it for an interesting.
And you make the
first
deadline.
Year. Yeah.
And you make the deadline.
Yeah. So I especially had to be on top of it at the beginning of the season because I was new to it, and I've got experience writing, but to be able to crank out an article every week was a bit of a challenge. But I've kind of got a rhythm now, and people have been very good about submitting. Terry submitted, her husband has submitted.
Wow.
We've got a nice little group of writers, and they're really good. And so, if you've read the articles, they can also read them online on the Sedona Westerners website.
Right. Is it a challenge to make sure that you're not repeating information or talking about a certain trail like too close together, or do people have their own story so it doesn't really matter whether you've mentioned it before?
Well, we did have a case this year where 2 articles came in on the same hike from 2 different groups.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so I was like, okay, how am I going to do this? Because I don't want to not publish one.
Right.
And so I contacted both the writers, and I said, what do you think if I combine the elements of the 2 articles into one? And so that's what I did. It took a little more work, but I think it came out as a nice article because you got to see what the different levels of group were doing and the kind of different experiences each was having.
As a long-term magazine editor myself, I appreciate that strategy that you employed there.
Yeah.
Very good. That's great. All right. So I know listeners who are really interested in learning more about hiking and what the trails are. So Terry, some insights, and obviously there's tons of trails here. Just what do you think the best, most interesting trails are in Sedona and the Verde Valley, the people, especially if they're just starting out? Let's focus in on that you would recommend that they look into and do.
So for right now, it's starting to get hot. So for an easier trail with the heat, I always like Fay Canyon. Mm-hmm. If you go early in the morning, it's still shady. And this time of year, it's almost like opening your refrigerator and walking into your refrigerator if you get up right at sunrise and go.
Nice.
There's some beautiful flowers usually, and it's in the shade and not too very long. So.
And where is that about?
Fay Canyon is if you go down Dry Creek and take a left, you've got, it's a big parking lot. You kind of can't miss it.
Nice.
Down past Boynton.
Right. So what about a couple other ones for maybe more experienced people?
So for the more experienced, if you really want to climb and get that cardio in, you can do Bear Mountain, but there's no shade. So make sure you bring lots of water and, again, get out early. This time of year, the focus is get out early.
Yeah.
You don't want to be hiking when it's 100 degrees, and make sure you bring plenty of water. If you are in the village, there's Cathedral. They just finished redoing the trail there. That's a nice hike and a nice viewpoint. The Hogs area, it's kind of, you almost can't go wrong with a trail in Sedona.
Yeah.
So the most important thing is get out there.
So does climbing or you mentioned Cathedral Rock Trail. Does climbing or hiking the Red Rocks constitute trail, Westerner trail?
Well, when I say climbing, I'm not talking about mountain climbing.
Right,
I'm just talking about that the trail has kind of flat or it has some elevation that you have to actually like climbing stairs. Climbing
Yeah.
the Red Rock is kind of like climbing stairs.
Yeah. Do most of the Red Rocks have trails?
There's trails in every part of the community.
Right. Yeah. So what are the trails that are particularly, favorites of yours?
I always say the trail that I'm on is my favorite. It really, literally is.
They're like babies. You can't have a favorite one, right? They're like your children.
It really depends on what I want to do. If I want to be in the forest, if I want to be on Red Rock, if I want a great view, if I just want to get out where there's nobody, it's all different trails.
Yeah.
So I live kind of close to where the studio is here, so I end up doing Gardner trails a lot. Those are some pretty new trails, and I think everybody tends to like the trails that are near their house because they don't have to deal with any kind of traffic.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, I'm familiar with hiking on trails near your house because back in Brooklyn, I would go from my house to the subway station, and that was kind of my hike for the day.
there you go.
maybe a little bit around Central Park was like the New York hike. Sarah, what about you? You're new to the area relatively, from what you said before. So since you've gotten here, what are your favorite trails?
Well, I live in the village of Oak Creek,
Right.
so I'm
As
a
we
lot
do, yeah.
more familiar with the trails down there as far as for private, personal hiking.
Right.
As far as we're hiking with the group, the amazing thing that's happened with the group is I've found so much information about the trails, and I found, not only do you do just this trail that everybody else is doing, but you can do a little offshoot of that makes it even more interesting. And so, in the last week I've done Airport Loop, which is a really fun trail because you get views 360 degrees around the city. But again, no shade. So, you definitely want to get out there early. I'm down by Slim Shady and Made in the Shade, and those are nice hikes as well, just to kind of get up and get some views of Courthouse Butte and Bell Rock. And so, those are fun to do. And
There's actually a hike named for Eminem, the rapper, Slim Shady.
Slim Shady, yes.
Did that come before Eminem? Or
I think it
was
did.
named for-
Yeah.
I can't even believe I made that reference. Actually,
No, but I will say, as somebody new to the area, the Westerners have given me such great insight into the trails in Sedona. And, you go off the schedule, so you're not like picking and choosing the hike you want to do that day. But
Right.
I've never been disappointed in a hike that we've taken.
Yeah.
And they're challenging and they're fun, and we've got great social, aspect to it. I made friends by becoming a member of the Sedona Westerners, and that's been an important part of being here.
And I know firsthand because my wife will say to me, I say, "Where are you going?" And the Westerners are having a party tonight. They're having a get together. I said, "Okay, so you do that fairly frequently, yes?"
Well, we have several
get-togethers.
scheduled, events every year.
So there's a lot of great camaraderie in the group.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah.
Amazing, yeah.
Well, when you share a passion like that with a bunch of people, there can be sometimes there's nothing better than having that group experience, and you all love something like that together.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
that's great.
like Terry, I'm a little bit younger than some of the other members, but I tell you, those older hikers are doing such an amazing job
I
out
bet.
there. I was following somebody the other day, and they were in their mid-70s, and I'm like, how are they doing that? It's like,
That's great. I mean, the experience.
because you get out there and you do it every day, and every week, and you're gonna keep going.
Yeah, like the group experience that those people have must be amazing and can be wonderful for new people joining, right?
Well, and everybody comes here from all walks of life.
Right.
And the other thing is, when you come and join the organization, especially like me, I joined kind of soon after I moved here. So I moved here, I had 0 friends.
Yeah.
And so it was all people that were kind of sort of my age. I was in the younger group, but we made friends, and everybody who was new that year was in that same boat of, I don't have all these friends. I've just left my job. I've, retired, and now I have this thing that, what do I do with my time? So when I first moved here, I was hiking with the Westerners 3-4 times a week.
Wow.
And those people became my good friends, and I've gone on backpacks with them. I've gone on river trips for weeks with them. I've done all sorts of things with them at this point.
So what did you have to do to become president?
Volunteer.
Well, I said no a lot of times. And when you become president, first you become the vice president.
Okay.
And
that usually happens.
I was telling you earlier, I had a friend who had ALS, and she was in the hiking club, and she was not able to hike anymore. And somebody asked me if I'd be vice president, and I kind of didn't want to yet. I knew eventually I would, but she said to me, "I think you should be vice president. It'd be fun. I'll help you with finding people." And so I kind of had said, well, I won't say no to things she wants to do because she needs some help. And so I thought, well, okay, I'll do it. So she got me into being vice president, and how I got chosen to do a second round is the real story, because I don't know that the Westerners have had very many presidents that have had 2 rounds of being president.
Wow. Yeah.
But coming out of COVID, we kind of lost the momentum, because when you don't hike for a year,
that's true.
You get people that haven't been in the organization doing things. So that's how I became president a second time.
So you don't have to answer this, but is the other person in the studio right now on a future president track? In the
Everybody is.
Yeah. Sarah might leap over the vice president job eventually, right?
No, she's got to be vice president first.
Yeah, that would happen.
Actually, being the vice president is a fun year
Fun
because
job.
you get to find all the speakers for the presentations.
Oh, nice.
For the club, so that's kind of fun.
Oh, that is good. That is good. So we're going to get back to talking about things like safety on hikes and equipment and all that kind of good stuff. But first, I have to acknowledge my sponsor on the show. Nestled in the heart of our breathtaking Sedona, husband and wife Damian Bruno and Danielle Gian have not just lived but flourished for more than 20 years in the Verde Valley. As pillars of the village of Oak Creek, they've raised a family, volunteered tirelessly with the Rotary Club of Sedona Village and the Sedona Village Partnership, and for a decade have been the proud organizers of the beloved annual community barbecue in the village of Oak Creek. Damien and Danielle aren't just your next real estate agents. They're your neighbors, your friends, and a top Sedona team ready to support you, whether you're buying or selling. With 2 decades of real estate expertise and a love for our community that's second to none, Damien and Danielle's Sedona Village Real Estate Group is the go-to business for your real estate needs. They want to make your Sedona dream a reality. So contact them today at SedonaRealEstateAgents.com, because community and experience matter. And as I've said many times, Damien and Danielle were the ones, the real estate agents that sold my wife B and I our house in the village of Oak Creek when we decided to move here. And they're tremendous real estate agents and great people. So check them out if you're looking to make a deal. So back to my guests from the Sedona Westerners. So, Terry, I don't know if this is an unusual situation compared to other times, but it just occurs to me, based on what's happened that I've been reading in the paper, that there have been a few recent serious accidents from hikers falling. And again, I don't know if this is common or an anomaly. So that leads me to the question of how should you be safe on the trail? Like, what are the do's and don'ts when you're a hiker, depending on your level of experience?
So I would say, you were asking if it's kind of normal, and I would say that I hear of a death out in Sedona probably every year from some kind of accident.
Right.
Often it's somebody that just doesn't think and they fall off one of the rocks. And I've heard anything from somebody dropped a water bottle on Devil's Bridge and went to retrieve it, and they didn't realize they were close to the edge and fell.
Wow.
Or somebody just fell off a Bear Mountain not too long ago.
Right.
So, that's one thing. Just be really careful if you're near one of the ledges.
Do you have incidents with people taking selfies when they're on the trail, like in dangerous spots?
No, the Westerners generally don't do a lot of selfie taking.
Right. If that's going to happen, that's going to be people like on their own.
That's going to be people on their own
freelancing.
that are taking selfies.
Yeah.
The Westerners do take pictures. We have a album that we do every year, so we get people to take pictures of those. But it's kind of not doing selfies; it's taking pictures of the rest of the group.
Right. But what would your advice, as experts?
But if
what would your advice be?
Don't take a selfie if you're near one of the cliff edges.
Really.
So I think the biggest thing as far as the hiking part is make sure that you have really good shoes. We always try and get people to wear lug-soled shoes that are fairly new. If they've been in your closet for 20 years, they've probably kind of lost their grip over the time.
Yeah, really.
And if you've hiked on them too much, you can start feeling that they're losing their grip. So I go through 1 to 2 pair of hiking shoes every year.
I bet.
And I just realized that that's part of my life now.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing is most of our members hike with hiking poles. Not
Right.
everybody does, but they're very useful. If you hike with me, you'll notice that I carry mine a lot. But when I'm going down hills, I like them. And when I'm going down things that aren't very solid footing. So hiking poles are useful. And
So some people, if they're a little older and maybe not as mobile as they used to be, would definitely need poles all the time. But then people who are more experienced and maybe in better shape, they'll just use the poles when they're on a difficult trail or they're going downhill.
Yeah, I'll use them when I need them.
Right.
So if it just kind of depends on the terrain, and they're also useful to brush cat clay out of the way instead of trying to do it with your hand, or, they've got a whole bunch of different uses besides just being a pole.
Right.
And then the other thing is make sure you carry plenty of water on the trail.
Yeah.
And especially with it being hot, I also like to have some of the electrolyte powder in my pack so that if I have overextended myself, I can put some of that in my water or give it to another hiker who's on the trail.
Absolutely.
And I've done both.
Yeah. So when you, I'm sure this is different depending on the hike, but what's like the time frame of most hikes, like an average amount of time once you start and you're finished? How long the hikes usually take?
It kind of depends on the group.
Right.
Some of the hikes are 3-ish hours, and other hikes can be all day.
Yeah. And you start pretty early in the morning mostly, right?
We usually change it by season. So
wow.
At the very beginning of the season, at the end of the season, we start usually 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. And then in the wintertime, we move more to 9 o'clock starts.
Got it. And so when's the current season over? It's coming up, right?
The season's already over.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah. Because once it's going to start getting hot, you're not out there.
It's usually hotter than this by now. So
Okay.
there are still splinter groups that are kind of friends of the Westerners
They can't give it up.
that still are hiking, and we'll go out at 6:30 in the morning this
Right.
time of year.
Right. What's a temperature that's considered too hot to recommend anybody going out? Or because you don't really have humidity here like we have back in the East when I was there. But, is there a cutoff point where you say, if it's 90 or more, don't do it? Is there a rule of thumb like that?
There really isn't. It's a personal thing. Some people don't like hiking if it's above 80.
Right.
Other people say it never gets too hot to hike. So
Right.
it's kind of knowing your body and what you can take.
Yeah, Sarah, the Friends of the Forest came up a little while ago, and I know you guys have connections with them. Terry said that she started with them. I know B, my wife, does work with Friends of the Forest. What's the connection with you guys, and how do you work with each other?
I think Terry could probably speak better than that. I haven't had much experience directly with them, but I know that we have done a couple of fundraisers this year that have helped the Red Rock
Trail Fund. That's
Right.
another organization.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know what? I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to ask you about hearing about how there's a selling of the metal trail signs to raise money for the Red Rock Trail Fund. And actually, this book selling this book. By the way, folks, I'm holding the book like you can see it. The Sedona Westerners published a book starting in 1968 called Those Early Days, A Pioneer History of Sedona and Vicinity. And it's been reprinted a couple of times, most recently in 2008. Tell us a little bit about the selling of the signs and raising money for the Trail Fund.
Right. So the signs were signs that the club put up in the early days, and they were these big metal signs. And if you've hiked trails in the past, you've seen them. Mm-hmm. Well, the Forest Service a couple of years ago decided that, or got told that those signs were no longer appropriate because they didn't meet the Forest Service guidelines.
Wow.
So the Forest Service and the Friends of the Forest started taking them out. And they were being stored in one of the big warehouses down at the Beaver Creek Workstation.
How many are we talking about?
There were 30 or so, I think, and they're still taking some out.
Okay.
So we heard about that they were there, and a few people had gotten them and put them in their yards. But there was this big pile. So one of our board meetings, we said, well, why couldn't we have a fundraiser and raise some money for the Red Rock Trail Fund and for trail work? So we contacted the Forest Service and said we'd like to get them, and this is what it's for. And they said, okay, well, there's a big pile of them, and some of them have a big wad of cement on the end, and what would you like to do? So some of our members that were on the board went down and picked them up and stored them in his yard, and we had a fundraiser. We raised almost $10,000 for the Red Rock Trail Fund.
Wow.
By selling these metal signs. So you'll see some of the Westerners have them in their yards now.
Wow. And of course, you guys had the inside track on first dibs.
No, it was an auction. So
oh, really?
It was an online auction, and nobody had any kind of dibs.
Oh, okay.
So
you're so altruistic, such a like honest group. So what's the Forest Service going to do for new signs? What's the plan there?
So the Red Rock Trail Fund has been putting up signs.
Okay.
And they show a lot more about distances between intersections and kind of where you are. The old signs, all they had was a trail number and the trail name.
Ah, okay.
So they didn't really tell you much of anything. The new signs are much better for hiking.
Wow. And they're not metal?
They're not metal.
Oh, wow. They're going to be wooden signs?
I think it's kind of a plastic kind of material.
Oh, okay.
And they get updated pretty frequently as the trails change.
Like a hybrid aluminum baseball bat. It's going to be a combination of materials. So Sarah, what now that you've been in the group for a couple of years and you're so involved with the articles, and obviously you're acquiring a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge with all of the writing that's being done on all the trails. What's your favorite thing about being involved with the group and beyond just the joy of the hiking itself? Right.
Well, I just appreciate what this club does for the community, to be able to bring all these people together. And as you said, it's all volunteer, to be able to get this large group of people together and organize it. So, I mean, they've got the website, where all the hikes are listed every year. And just to be able to say we can give back to the community as well, not just a social group, not just a hiking group, but to be able to bring it to the community is in addition to all that other fun stuff.
Yeah. When you guys are out hiking, I'm sure you see tourists hiking near you that aren't members of the club. Do you sometimes get exasperated by the way, like, the tourist hike, or whether they're using the wrong equipment or just whatever they're doing on the trails?
Well, there are certain no-nos on the trail. Like you said, we wish we were hiking boots, and sometimes I'll see people out there with their sandals on, and I'm like, there's cactus out here.
Yeah.
One of the things I do carry in my pack is tweezers, because you're inevitably going to get a cactus somewhere in your body that you're going to need to pull out. So, and if you're just wearing sandals, you're going to get them in your toes.
Right.
People not bringing enough water,
Yeah, I know. I mean, B does work with Friends of the Forest. Is that what some of the people do? I know she tells me she's out there watching people hiking to see if they don't have enough water or?
I have seen numerous occasions where our members, who are also members of the Friends of the Forest, will have extra water bottles that they'll offer to
great.
the tourists to make sure that they can get back safely.
Is there? Are you guys? Do you guys like monitor littering and
We will pick
abuse
up
of the
litter
trail?
along the
Yeah.
trail if we see it, and if we see something that's been, for a better word, vandalized, we'll
Yeah.
report it to the Forest Service with the if we can get a GPS on it, we will, and tell them to come out. We were hiking somewhere this summer or this winter, and somebody had written their name on all the rocks.
On the rocks.
On the rocks.
I was gonna guess trees were being like abused, but it's rocks.
They were doing it on.
And what are they writing with on rocks? What do they?
I think they were just taking a rock and just scratching their
scratching,
name on.
yeah.
So it was something that could be fixed, but it was so obviously wrong,
Yeah.
for them to have done that.
Yeah.
And I've never seen anybody do it, in person, but we'll see the effects of it and we'll report it so that we can make sure that the trails are maintained and that they're presentable and not vandalized.
Threaten to push them off the edge of one of the cliffs if
Yeah.
they get out of control. I know you wouldn't do that.
No.
So-
But it's just the stewardship, making sure
Oh, yeah,
that
absolutely.
the trails are here for today, for tomorrow, and for everybody's families.
That's right. That's right. So what's the size of the membership these days, Terry?
So believe it or not, you'll think this is a made-up number, but we had 400 members last year.
Seriously?
Exactly
Wow.
400.
Exactly 400.
Exactly 400.
What, and so you may not know this to the number, but like what percentage of the 400 are in the I don't know how to put this, the most experienced group, the expert group versus the beginner group?
I would say each group is about the same size.
Wow.
So the hiking groups usually have at least 10 people show up for a hike, and kind of in the high 20s is about the largest hike for any
On a given day. Yeah.
But, people will come and go, and we have a lot of people who come here for the winter time and only sign up. We have people who come here for a weekend and find out about the Westerners online and sign up for our hikes. And they say, wow, this is great value, because if I had a guide, I'd spend way more than this than
Right.
joining the club. So
That's a great transition to my next question. So if you're a tourist and you find out about the Westerners and you want to like piggyback on a hike, you don't have to necessarily be a member for
you do
that.
have to be a member.
Okay.
But they sign up, they become a member, and then they see the list of the hikes on the website and then come join one of the groups.
So do you have people that just don't live here year round that are members? Mm-hmm. Wow. That's pretty wild. Yeah. So how does one become a member?
So if you go onto the website, SedonaWesterners.org, right now it's not open for membership, but mid-July we'll be opening membership for the season that starts in September.
Right. And what's do you find that year by year some people leave and you replace them with other people, or is it yeah?
Yeah, every year we have some people that either age out or decide they're too busy with other things. This
Right.
year we had 125 new members.
125 new members. Wow. And how many dropped out that year? This past year?
Probably about the same, because we
We're about
end
the
up
same
being
number.
about 400, 450 people every year.
Oh, that's surprising. I wouldn't have guessed that many people leave in a year, but
Well, some people move away. Some
Yeah.
people just get too old. They can't do the trails anymore.
Yeah. But it's great that you can maintain that level.
Well, Sedona always has new people coming in.
On the given day, like you were talking about, when people go out, is it the variety of the different groups that go out, or is it one day is just the amblers and one day is just one of the other groups? Or
So on some days, there's two groups that hike.
okay,
So we have two groups that hike on Saturdays. One is our toughest group, and the other is kind of an easier group. And we started the easier group so that some of the people that are still working and only have weekends off but weren't in the shape of the hardest group could come and hike with us.
right.
So that's been a pretty popular group. The same thing on Thursdays. We have two groups.
So
we
is
have
are
an easier
Thursdays
group.
and Saturdays the days? You
Those
go
are the
out?
2 days we have two groups, and then on Sundays we have one group. Tuesdays we have one group, And then we have a kind of a special group called the Trackers.
Okay.
And they don't hike every week. They don't go out every week. They're on Wednesdays usually. And they do kind of field trip types of hikes. Sometimes it's not even a hike.
Right.
So anything from, we did a foraging walk with somebody from Flagstaff who came down and showed us what plants are edible and you can eat. And one of the things they did this year was a trip up to Rock Art Ranch in the Williams area. So kind of far afield and doing different things.
Yeah. You mentioned Flagstaff. Are there similar groups in other areas in the Verde Valley, Flagstaff, Prescott, or are you basically the...
I think everybody has their own little hiking club, whether they're a nonprofit like the Westerners or not.
Right.
Is a question.
Or small groups that just get together.
I think they're more small meetup kind of groups.
Right.
But I'm not really sure. I do know we will do some of our hikes in Prescott and Flagstaff. And this year, for the first time, we hosted one hike that was with a hiking group from Phoenix, and they came up
for a
day and hiked with us.
That's great.
And I think that next winter we're going to do one where we go down and hike somewhere in the Phoenix area. Probably Superstitions or something like that.
Do you think you'll ever do anything with people in Scottsdale, or are they just on the golf course all the time?
No, Scottsdale has people who hike.
I'm not putting down Scottsdale. I actually play baseball out there a lot. So
okay.
There's just a lot of golf in Scottsdale. That seems to be the go-to sport.
Well, the Superstitions east of Phoenix are a great place to go backpacking.
Oh, really?
Or day hiking.
Yeah. Do you also do a lot of camping?
Do some camping and some backpacking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You, Sarah? How about you?
I have in the past. I haven't since I've moved to Arizona. It's just, a matter of timing.
Yeah. Does the hiking and the camping kind of go hand in hand when you do the camping? Is there always hikes involved in that, or
when I go camping, it's to hike? Yeah,
it's to hike.
Definitely.
Great.
Definitely.
So I think this is an appropriate question for both of you. Obviously, any organization has ideas about how they want to grow, what they want to do in the future, anything new they can add. I don't know if that's the case with the Westerners. Terry, I'll start with you. As president, do you have any vision of what you'd like to see the group start doing new, or just continuing on the level that you've been at for a while?
Well, I think the Sedona Westerners has been a hiking club for quite a while, and I think we're going to stay a hiking club. I don't see us going back to the old days and doing some of the things that they used to do. But I think
within the rubric,
I think
of
within the rubric, we're going to still do what we can to support the Red Rock Trail Fund.
Right.
And we did a code project this year with the Friends of the Forest to monitor cathedral closure when the trail work was being done. Mm-hmm. So if there's anything like that, I think we'll continue to support that. In prior years, we've done work days with the Forest Service where we've sponsored one of the trail work days. And what the sponsoring means is we provide pizza and sodas for the people who've done the trail work.
Nice. Sarah, how about you? Is there anything you'd like the club to do that you haven't told Terry about yet?
Oh, golly. No, I just think, to try to encourage new members to check us out and to become part of the club, whether it's a weekend or, a season. Mm-hmm. Because I think there's a lot to learn about Sedona and the trails by becoming part of the club that you're not going to get, just by going to Devil's Bridge or that kind of hike, where it's so crowded. I think it's amazing for our hikes that there's so many where we're out there and we're the only people there for the longest time. And, we might run into other people, but, we're out there and there's so much more to see in Sedona. And I think that's just to be able to share that with the local community and visitors would be great.
Yeah. So what about outreach beyond obviously the newspaper articles are great promotion, but the local people are seeing that. And you have the website. Is there any other proactive outreach you have to get members in?
Not that we've done in this past year,
right.
But I think that's something we can consider, as we move forward. But we are an organization that has a board, so any decisions need to be run through the board.
Yeah.
So, it's something we could talk about, but we haven't yet.
That's great. I'm not putting pressure on you. I'm just blue skying here. I had to mention this because I just turned the book over to the back cover, and I was scanning it, and I just felt like I wanted to read what was written on the back cover of the book, because I think it's really poignant and interesting, and I think it would give people a great idea of what this is all about. So this is what's written on the back cover of those early days of pioneer history of Sedona and vicinity that the Sedona Westerners have put out over since 1968. So it reads, as you enter Sedona for the first time, you are overcome by the awesome view of the Red Rock vistas. Certainly you have found one of the more beautiful places on earth. Continue your trip south to the greenery of the Verde Valley, or north through the granite peaks of Oak Creek Canyon. Along the way, you will crisscross the paths and places known for our early pioneers. It was a different time, a different world, one void of computers, cell phones, and the internet. In many places, even electricity was a novelty. The automobile was just coming of age. Roads needed to be built, cattle rounded up and branded, and the closest thing to a superstore was a small general store called Hart's. Between these pages lie the stories of these early settlers, some in their own worlds, the hardships, the worries, the failures, and the triumphs. Here is the opportunity to travel through time, to meet these original pioneers and relive each of their adventures. That's really compelling stuff. And do you feel like you're a pioneer in some way, Terry? I mean, I know you're not a pioneer from the 60s, but you'll be a pioneer 40 years from now.
I guess from that point of view.
Do you feel like it when you're on the trail? Do you go back in time when you're on the trail?
You certainly can go back on time in some of the trails where you go and you find evidence, and sometimes the evidence of the early pioneers and sometimes the evidence of the Native Americans who lived in this area for generations way before that. So we find a lot of that. We respect it, and it's pretty awesome to go and find like a corn cob that was from the 1200s and think about how long that corn cob has been under that cliff overhang and still there, and pretty awesome. Yeah. Or a pottery shard or whatever it is.
So, which we leave there on the site.
We leave there.
Is any of it kind of surreal for you, Sarah? The experience?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, just, to be able to go to a spot that, was lived in, 1,000 years ago, and to see evidence of that. What fascinates me about hiking is to be able to go somewhere that you can only get to on foot.
Yeah. That's right.
And, whether you're walking over somebody else's trail or you're just, out there experiencing it at the moment, you're in the nature, you're in the past and the present at the same time.
That's great. Well, this is all the time we have. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate both of you being here today.
Well, thank you for having us.
That's great. I want to thank my special guests, Terry Perchescu and Sarah Stifler of the Sedona Westerners Hiking Club. I hope you joined the conversation. And again, special thanks to my show sponsors, Damien and Danielle, Sedona Village Real Estate Group with Coldwell Banker. You want to seek them out for your real estate needs because their devotion to the community and their experience matter. Please tune in again next Saturday morning at 9 a.m. when my special in-studio guests will be members of the Sedona City Council, including Mayor Scott Jablow, Vice Mayor Holly Plug, and Council Member Kathy Kinsella. We'll be diving into many of the issues that the residents of the Sedona community care most about. Thanks again to my main man and producer, Ryan Thompson. By the way, tell your friends who couldn't hear the show today that they can listen to a podcast version anytime on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And you can also find the show on Facebook and Instagram. And email me with comments and questions to Stephen@mellowmountainradio.com. Thanks for listening to Red Rock Country's radio magazine. Catch you next Saturday morning, everyone.